This is Ed Hartman, composer and producer of The Scalpel, an unreleased silent horror film made by Richard Lyford. Richard was 19 years old when he made his sixth 16mm film in Seattle. With very little budget, Lyford experimented with special effects, miniatures, double exposures, and intense makeup, and was becoming an excellent director. The film features Lyford's family and friends playing a variety of nurses and doctors in an experimental medical facility. Barbara Berger, a favorite Lyford lead actress, went on to successfully work on stage and television. Richard died in 1985, so it's a challenge as a composer to score his films. Richard experimented with dual turntables synchronized to a projector. My scores of his films include classical and popular music of the 30s based on my research of his playlists. Since 2017, I have been working with the Lyford family and have scored another Lyford film, As the Earth Turns, a 1937 silent sci-fi film that's on Amazon and other platforms, including Turner Classic Movies. I also produced a short documentary about Lyford, It Gets in Your Blood. Richard went on to work for Disney on Dumbo, Pinocchio, and Fantasia, and eventually directed an Academy Award-winning documentary about Michelangelo. Okay.
Hey, listeners, welcome again to YUH with Lisa, Phil, and Aaron. Today we are speaking with Ed Hartman. He's back with us for a second movie called The Scalpel. So, Ed, tell us a little bit about the movie.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me back. This is a treat. I was here before with As the Earth Turns, a 1937 film by Richard Lyford, who did it when he was 20. And you can refer back to that episode number, whatever the heck it is, or go to the website at Hartman Music, and you'll see all sorts of information about all these films. Anyway, the film he did before, well, actually, that was his 9th film before he was 20. The Scalpel is a film he did when he was 19 in 1936 in Seattle with no money, with high school and college friends and family. That was pretty much his mode of filmmaking. And he did remarkable films. I mean, this is a horror film, a straight horror film in the Jeckyl and Hyde category. It has to do with injecting yourself with stuff and whatever. Right. But anyway, it's 20 minutes long. It's actually a true short. Now, in the 1920s and 30s, these were standard length films, especially in the silents. They were one-reelers or two-reelers or three-reelers, depending on that. And so, it was quite acceptable to do that. I think it's very ironic that in modern day filmmaking, a short film is 10 to 15 minutes, typically, maybe half hour. And film festivals just eat up shorts. That's the only place you really see them, except for a few art platforms and things like that. But they really don't have distribution set up for them. So for this film, there's really not a heavy distribution plan, because I don't know where you'd go with it. With As the Earth Turns, it was 45 minutes. Was it just on the edge of a feature? In fact, it was just on the edge of enough of a feature that we could enter it in the Oscars in 2019 because it was over 40 minutes. Not expecting to win anything, but we got it in the eyes of some very interesting people. Anyway, this film, though, again, is a true short. And it's what's really insane about this particular part of the story is I'll briefly summarize how this whole thing got to me, again, going back a little bit. As far as the Earth Turns. But basically 2013, there's a couple of guys on the Classic Horror Film Board, and they were watching, it's an interesting online board, and they were watching this video, I think it was video, I don't know, it may have been DVD, called something, I can't, what's this thing called? Monster has crashed the pajama party. Oops, I don't have my picture on very well, so it lengths out here. Anyway, whatever. So, but there were two fragments.
Monsters crashed. That's not part of your body, so it's covering it up.
Yeah. Anyway, monsters crash the pajama party, and there were two fragments in that film. This is important to understand how this happens. And one was called Ritual of the Dead, and the other was Scalpel. Now, nobody knew what these were. At this time, these incredibly smart people, Gary Prange and David Lowery. David Lowery was a tremendous film screenplay writer. He just passed away, which is really too bad. And Gary is still around, and they kind of helped manage that horror film board. And they were looking at this thing, an extraordinary detective work. They figured out that these films were done by this guy, Richard Lyford, based on his articles in American Cinematographer in the 30s. And he wrote about these films. Eventually, he goes to LA and works with Disney and things like that. Anyway, so they discovered this stuff, and this went on, and you go and watch the thread, and it just goes on forever. Eventually, they got to know Kim Lyford, who's the great niece of Richard Lyford, who lives in Seattle. She gets the films, the actual 60 millimeter films, and eventually the film estate from Chris, who's Richard's son. He's now, keep in mind, he's in Western New York somewhere. So he brings the films out to Kim. She has them, and she's sitting on these things. I'm teaching Kim. I knew her son. He was a drum student from me years before. At some point, she comes to me to take some conga lessons, hand drums, things like that. Just interested in percussion. And so I was teaching her, and one day I'm showing her a little, because I'm scoring more and more films at this point. This is 2017. Buster Keaton short, and I had put a piece of mine. I do a lot of music for film and TV, and it just kind of fit. Anyway, she saw that and said, "Wow, I have this film I got, and one of them, and she had, of all the films she had, most of them were commercial films that she did for other companies like General Electric or the military and things like that. He didn't really own those things, but he had directed them eventually later in life. But there was a couple of these other homemade films from the 30s that he did, and amongst them was As the Earth Turns. Although it wasn't complete, it was kind of a piece. Anyway, she engages me to score this film. And I got involved in editing, producing, and it became a huge deal. It got into, I don't know, well over 100 festivals and won 100 awards and more or whatever. And it's been on Turner Classic Movies a couple of times. And it's on Amazon. You can still see it on Amazon and Tubi. It's through a distributor, Indie Rights. So that was going on for a while. I'm not sure what I'm missing here, but anyway, in the last time we spoke, I had created a short documentary called "It Gets in Your Blood," which is about Richard Lyford. I'm getting involved in this guy's life big time.
You sure are.
So I created a 15-minute mini documentary. I have no business doing any of this stuff. I'm really just a composer, musician, but I became a producer, editor of the rest of this stuff, like we all do in life. So
you're scoring films already, though, right?
Yeah, I'd been scoring stuff. Mostly shorts and stuff like that.
So you had an in.
Yeah, and I'm set up to do all this stuff as a musician and composer. And As the Earth Turns, oh yeah. So one other thing, this other, there we go. This is a DVD of As the Earth Turns that I put together, and this has, in fact, As the Earth Turns, my documentary, and the scenes from Ritual of the Dead and Scalpel, which I had also scored little 7 to 8 or 9 minute sections of. That's all we had of the films, plus a few other things that are in there as well. So that's available as well. You can see that, but you can't see the whole Scalpel film because it isn't on there. Okay, so sorry.
No problem.
So I scored It Gets in Your Blood. All right, I made It Gets in Your Blood after like 2 or 3 years of research, and got it in hundreds of festivals and awards and all the rest of that stuff. Again, it's another huge project, and I'm dealing with Disney for clearances and Aramco, where he went to insane. Okay, so flash to 2024. This year, I have all these films. Kim has given me the physical films, the film estate, the LLC.
Wow.
She says, "Here, run with this thing."
Wow.
Okay,
So
sure.
your hard
Why
work
not?
has turned into riches. You've hit a gold mine here then.
Well, it's turned into a lot of work. Anyway, the story I tell is there's a thing called there's a little film, there's a documentary you can watch about Stanley Kubrick's assistant, called the Helper or something like that, and it's about the guy who actually took care of, to this day, Kubrick's films, and he was still cutting his films now, because films never get finished. That's what you find out about this sort of thing. You can cut them for 100 years, and I'm editing. Yeah, I'm editing Richard Lyford's film, and the Scalpel I had to edit, just like As the Earth Turns. I found extra parts for it. I pieced together, again, stuff I'd never think I'd ever do. Okay, so we're in 2024.
Film Worker.
Yeah, the Film Worker. That's right. That's right. It's a great movie. And I remember seeing that and going, this is before I got involved. I said, I'm never going to be that guy. That's exactly who I've become. Okay.
Famous last words.
Lifer work.
Yeah. So okay. So I have these films for the last couple of years. They've been sitting in a box 10 feet away from me with Richard Lyford's spirit floating around and everything else. Everything I'm doing, I'm like, I don't know, Richard, what do you think? It's okay? I don't know. I really don't know if I'm messing with his legacy or bringing it, fame. I don't know. I think he's according to
I'm
his,
sure he's pleased.
According to his kid, he's saying, nah, Richard would love this. So, and that's great. So I'm looking at this, and I decided I need to get these films somewhere where they're okay. I'd been looking at University of Washington Archive, UCLA Archive, and I've been communicating with both. But there was also another company, actually Kim came up with, called Periscope Film in LA. And they're an archivist. They also create stock footage. Well, the reality is these films, most of them I didn't own, except for a handful of these things of his early work that I own the film estate. But, military films, those are public domain, and stuff for other companies, corporate stuff. Again, I had to get clearances just for the documentary for that stuff. So I thought, well, okay. So I looked into it, and I got to know these guys down in LA. They're just wonderful people. Nick Spark and his guy down there he works with, and they have climate control and the whole bit. And they also make these films available for stock footage until AI takes us all out. Right. But anyway, and I thought, wow, this is an interesting idea. So I was in touch with them, and we decided this is a great idea. And I wasn't sure if I was going to try and drive them down there or ship them or whatever. And it took some months to make these decisions and stuff like that. Some point, I decided I got to get rid of this because I wasn't sure about being able to drive down the coast. My car wasn't really there. Now I have one that is, but anyway, and I was going through all these films for the last time. And lo and behold, I discovered a can. Now there's about 40 cans of film here, and we had scanned and digitized everything up here to different levels, mostly pretty decent level. And one of the little smaller cans, I have a 16 millimeter editor that I'd gotten early on just so I could look at these films to make sure I knew what was on them. It was kind of hard to use, not real helpful, but it was I could, view them on a little thing. I even made a little short using that thing. I
think my dad had one of those things.
Yeah, it was from the 30s appropriately. It's the same kind of, Richard probably had. Anyway, I even made a little film using it as a prop. Okay. But anyway, I'm looking at it and I'm checking this one thing. I don't recognize this film. And it's the title for the Scalpel. It's the title image. I had never seen this before. I mean, wait a minute. I have the second half of this movie. There it was. It's been sitting there for 5 years, 7 years. The first half of that movie. Okay. What the heck? So I contact him immediately. We have the first half of the Scalpel. It's here. Okay. So we had it scanned. Now it came back kind of bleached out. It was not the same quality for whatever reason. Oh no, I gotta go back. So these films, this video that I mentioned, Something Weird, anyway, the Monsters of Pajama Party thing, that was from a company called Something Weird Video, which it took a long time to get a hold of these guys. And the guy died, but his widow was still running this thing. And I finally got a hold of her. What's that?
Now it's called Fox News, Something Weird Video.
Yeah, right. And they're kind of exploitation videos. Yeah, same as Fox. So, but basically, kind of weird movies, really weird movies. And they had put together this funky thing. So I got a hold of her, and she had the actual film for the Scalpel. That's how we originally got a hold of it. And she was like 2 miles away from my house. This is even more spectacular. So I was able to go there and get that footage, which was in spectacular quality. It was just, contrast was perfect. And I made the film that went on the DVD was based on that image that we had scanned in 2019 or so. Okay. So we have the first half of the film, and it's not the same quality as the second half. Well, there's another scanning company in town that we engaged called Light Press, and they both did a wonderful job. The first company did the first one, which was great, but for whatever reason, the second one didn't come out that way. So we went to them, and they do a frame-by-frame scanning. So basically, it's like, thousands of images that make the film up. And it's remarkable. And then using them and a company called Victory Studios and a few other people in town, we were able to revive that first half and bring it up to the same quality as the second half. Yeah. And I edited them together. Well, when I went through this film, I've even got the first scan, it perfectly unified with the second half. Now, what's really weird about this, seriously weird, is that the second half comes from New York State. And the first half comes from 2 miles away from me, from the 30s, 90 years ago. I can't explain this. I'm in Seattle.
Kind of like putting a shipwreck back together or something, yeah.
But it doesn't even make sense that these two films could ever come back together. There's 6 other films out there. Ritual of the Dead, we have a fragment of that. So 6.5 that I'm still looking for. If anybody has ever, and I have lists of them.
Well, I was wondering about that. He did 9 films, right? So
yeah, 9 exactly. There's missing stuff out there, and he probably sold some of this stuff when he was older, just to kind of make some cash, which is just yikes. But and we thought
he's a notable part of film history, though, right? I mean, he's
huge. And every time I talk to people, I talk to film historians, they're just all over this, going, oh my God, what is going on here? And it's not that they know him, but they see all he was involved in Fantasia and Dumbo and all sorts of stuff. He really had a remarkable life. And the mini doc I got, I figured this out. I put this all together. Okay, so this film has this massive history to it, and it worked out real well. Now, keep in mind, I'd already scored the second half. I'm thinking, well, I could rescore the whole thing, but I thought, I like the second half score. So luckily, through Logic, this DAW digital audio workstation, I had saved that session, but more important, I had saved, I can't show this stuff. Man, what in the heck? There it is. Anyway, I had saved the music, the sheet music.
Camera or something. Huh?
Yeah, I got to keep it back there next to me. There we go. Okay. Anyway, I had enough. Because the way I score is I'll write a piano part, and then I'll orchestrate it from there. But I had saved the piano scores and my kind of a fake cheat like a jazz musician might use with chords and things like that. So I was able to create the first half of the film based on the second half scored, all of the ideas, and that way I saved myself some time. But again, I came up with a score that sounds pretty good. And if you want, I can play a second of kind of the main theme of this that I derive this stuff from.
And I'll inject Lisa in the neck with a syringe while you're at it, so we can get the
right.
film.
You got just the right thing there. Anyway, so this was kind of the opening theme.
Let's use this one.
Well, that's the Scalpel.
Something like that. Not doing a good job.
Nice of you, trust.
Something like that. Anyway, those are kind of the main chords. Now everybody can steal it and make their own thing. But that whole chord progression and that style is really kind of a 1930s, 40s, kind of a thing.
And organs.
Right.
Yeah, and I did add organ, although I didn't actually, with the As Your Turns, I had organ as a kind of an homage to Bernard Herrmann, which I love as a film composer. I didn't add it to Scalpel. So the only thing I added that was new to the Scalpel was a little bit of organ that goes through both parts. And then there was the same music.
I like the drum fills.
Oh, thank you. I did use the same person who I'd used at Bad Animals. He did the mix of this film, and I'm missing his name. Oh my God, I can't remember him. Anyway, too many things in my head. But anyway, he came and he wound up working with me on the final mix. And then we went to Bad Animals, which is a wonderful final post, and kind of brought everything together. Yeah. So between these other companies, we were able to kind of bring this film as clean as we could, and it really came out very, very well in my opinion.
Oh yeah. We watched it twice. We watched it together, and I just watched it this just before the show. And
he kept saying, "We got to watch this movie. We got to watch this movie." And I'm sitting there thinking, "Okay, it's a movie."
She says, "That's not from 1987.
Like, that's a 20-minute movie."
Yeah,
like 20 minutes, hon. Yeah.
But okay.
You're expecting a full-length feature?
Yeah, I thought it was a full-length feature.
Well, here's some of the.
I know. Why would I?
Here's some of my impressions from it.
If he'd said it was a short, we'd have probably watched it 4 or 5 times.
I thought that it looked like, you see these send-ups where a modern camera, they'll try to redo an old scene and maybe even a silent scene, and you can tell, well, it looks too clear, it looks too pristine. It doesn't look as overproduced, produced the way it was back in the 30s or whatever. I felt like this one looked really clean. So the restoration was really really good on it.
Yeah.
And
kind of like a vinyl versus CD.
Oh, absolutely. It's well, okay. So he's using 60 millimeter film, just like As the Earth Turns, probably maybe even a lesser camera than at this point. And you can see his development going into As the Earth Turns. There's even a moment where he plays the monster, the guy who becomes the monster, and he goes, I had to figure out who everybody was, because there's no real thing that says this person's playing this, and you have to kind of piece it together.
You have to look on the door, and
you have to look on the door and assume that's that guy's thing. It wasn't necessarily that. There was some interesting angles I had to reverse, actually, because people were going out one direction. He broke the 90-degree rule once, and I thought, I got to fix that for him anyway. But Eric Johnson is the guy that who did the mix in Seattle. He has his own company, Coyote Studios. So, but yeah, he's doing all this stuff with again, family, friends, all the rest of it. He's doing all the makeup. That transition. The monster transitions that are spectacular. There's one I really couldn't figure out, where he first starts to transition, and it's not a dissolve. Mm-hmm. And I think somebody suggested, I think that's a lighting, that they shifted the lighting, and that's how the color changes on his face. Like that. Okay. That is the simplest thing I've ever.
Like when it was melting.
Yeah. Now later,
right at the beginning, when he's lighting the doctor from underneath.
Oh, and, no, there's all sorts of those images.
There's the other one where he fades to black, and right as the light's going out, you see another doctor's glasses kind of glaring.
You're catching all. That's all the stuff I love that he really's got down. But no, there's one point where he said, and these are silent, so he has intertitles, the captions on there. We did have to do a little editing because they were, and it was weird. The first half was a little different than the second with the captions, and I thought, well, I couldn't really have figured that out, so maybe that's why it broke apart. But through a little bit of narrowing the view of we were able to kind of clean that stuff up, and we got rid of some. But I really left in I left in the edits, the physical film edits, for the same, because in the second half I had left him in. So I could have cleaned him up, but then I would have had to clean up the second half, and I already scored the second half, and that would have screwed up the sync for the music. So I said, the heck with it, we're going with As the Earth Turns style, which is really what he did. And I'm glad we did that, because if it was too clean, then you really didn't get a sense of what he did. It would look almost a little too modern if I cleaned it up. It's a little more, jumpy too.
Well, like the old Dr. Jeckyl and Mr. Hyde. The way they do that is he would drink from the beaker, Dr. Jekyll would, and then he'd crumple down behind the desk, and then he'd come back up and be Mr. Hyde. I mean, that's a pretty clumsy way to achieve the transition. compared to
Right.
this.
Well, Lyford's he does a massive dissolve thing, and in the research, because he wrote about this stuff in American Cinematographer when he was, at 20, and he said, it took 6 hours to do that scene.
Yeah,
Now,
I bet.
that same transition, there's another film of
And then
his.
the makeup took longer than that.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
another film, the Huxley Inn or something that we don't know, and we have one picture, a similar kind of a transition that he might have started in that film and then borrowed from himself. I don't know, and that might be there. There's a famous film that was never found. It's one of the most famous missing horror films. I can't remember the name, and we think that was the original inspiration. If you ever talk to anybody in classic horror, this is the film they'll say, "Oh, have you ever? We're still looking for that film. It disappeared."
We did video. We did a podcast on. I doubt this is the same one, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
No, this is silent horror from the 20s. Yeah, this goes way the heck back, but it's London After Midnight. That's it. Lon Chaney, I think, and it just doesn't exist. But we think he saw that, and that might have inspired him on that.
Well, that whole
anyway,
thing about lost film, that's really fascinating to me. And just to think all of the film out there that's been lost
Probably
to
sitting
time.
in somebody's attic, chewed up by something.
Yeah,
I think he just used like a big house to make the doctor's office.
Oh yes, no. So the house,
and the paper. I think it's paper for all the signs.
I was wondering whose
That's
house.
right. This was all done with zero budget. Pretty much his mom was good at sewing, so she was good at costumes, and his sister, and so his sister's in this one, Louise. Yeah. She might have been as the Earth Turns, I don't know, but there's all sorts of people.
Nurses.
Yeah, and Barbara Berger, who became Berger. Went on to As the World Turns and a bunch of soap operas, and she was on the stage in Broadway. She was kind of his lead actress in As the Earth Turns and this, and probably a number of a few of the other ones. We think he kind of liked her, but I don't think she was necessarily returned his stuff.
Like Hitchcock's Tippi Hedren or
any of the women he worked with.
Right, they were all blondes, weren't they?
Kim Novak.
Oh, so an interesting thing is Barbara's brother. I always kept thinking it's Einstein, but it's Einstein. Wait a minute.
EYN.
Yeah, there's no N. It's Einstein.
Yeah.
I was just told how to pronounce it, Eastine or something like that. Anyway, her brother's the main doctor who's running the place. Now, what's
Steinberger.
Yeah, I continue to research this because I've been working on a screenplay about his first 20 years in Seattle. That's pretty much done, and that's another story. But anyway, so I know quite a bit about this. And her brother was going to UW, where Richard eventually went for, I don't know, maybe a semester or two. and her brother was running the medical club, the pre-med club. So he was involved there, and he became a doctor. and I think Richard took that class probably to get a hold of that stuff that's in the movie, the files and stuff. And they did. Most of the scenes were done at the Lyford house, which I've been to a couple times. I know the people that live there, and they're really interested in these films. And it looks the same. And the upstairs is full of these rooms. And then I probably talked about this before, in the basement, there's a wonderful room down there with an entrance to the back, kind of a back alley, that was his theater that he had 50 theater seats in, and he invited his friends and to come over and produce this stuff. This is what he did. He was making these movies.
Yeah, that's where the movies were when he died, I thought, but I guess one was in New York. Yeah.
No, they had gone, well, that house had been sold and a few times over, and in fact when I went to there was a proscenium in front of the stage because it was called the Oriental Theater, and they kind of an Oriental dragony thing. And when the folks that moved in there first went in there, it was still there, parts of it, and they threw it away not knowing what it was, and I'm like, they were horrified when I told them that's what it was. So they're really wonderful. And And they've, really gotten into this whole backstory on stuff. So, but anyway, most of the film, that and As the Earth Turns, had scenes there as well. But some of the medical stuff, we think, based on his writings, was filmed at a medical institute in Seattle that he had gotten, some access to. What I gotta wonder is, at one point the monster like shoves over a whole, bunch of vials on the ground. I think, I'll bet there's a whole bunch of soft towel, blankets underneath that. Because, that was a lot of glass to break. But he trashed that scene. I mean, man, that was a glorious. You hear about actors just
when he's pulling the shelf open to get to the girl.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and he. I mean, there's some violence in this movie that's surprising. You don't usually see that.
Are real. In addition to the transition, I should say that I love the score during the transition. The way that slow piano was kind of the demented sounding, descent into.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
What was interesting about the score is
the throat slit of Doctor.
The other guy. That doctor. That's Alan Holting. That's Alan Holting, who's the main hero, along with Barbara Berger in As the Earth Turns. Same guy. Okay. He's also in Ritual of the Dead, which is kind of a mummy thing, and he gets hacked, although you don't see any of that.
I thought that was the most graphic scene of the movie. It really looked like he got it.
And the reason I had to write the screenplay is that, he talks about it, that when he showed Ritual of the Dead, somebody in the audience is like, what kind of a nut created this movie? Hacking. And he was just loving it. So again, the other thing that you got to remember is that Lyford was experimenting with dual turntables and putting on kind of classical music. And eventually his goal was to have dialogue, because he didn't have access to sound film in Seattle in the 1930s. It was fairly new in Hollywood, and it was a whole different process you couldn't do. He's developing his own films. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
So, but he got pretty proficient at it. He had playlists and timings all set up, and this was synchronized to the projector, which is one reason why Disney got involved with him, because he was impressed with his technical expertise on this.
Probably what led to Fantasia. Yeah.
Yes.
On his resume.
Yeah, and in my screenplay, I have Disney watching As the Earth Turns when he comes to Burbank and gets invited to Disney to be a director and whatever.
So I assume he must have relocated to California.
Yeah. People ask me why do we not know who this guy is? And again, the story, you can watch the documentary at some point, but and if anybody wants to see the documentary, they can see it on the video, but they can contact me as well, and I can send them a link. But the reason is, right after As the Earth Turns, he was 20, and he fairly immediately went to LA to get out of Seattle. He wanted to be a filmmaker. And he shows up in Glendale at the Glendale YMCA. Now, this is important because the Glendale YMCA, and I know for a fact he was there because the 1940 census shows him there. But anyway, he's close to Burbank, and that's when Disney discovers him. As far as I understand, the story goes is that Disney had a barber who had attended a amateur film screening somewhere, that Lyford had been doing amateur films competitions. In fact, the Scalpel won some awards, and some of his films had. Anyway, he was showing these films in LA, and theoretically this guy heard about him and told Disney about this filmmaker who's living in Glendale, and invites him over to the lot, and he gets hired on the spot. Yeah, anyway, it gets weirder. Excellent. Now, I'll also mention this at this point, is that in 2019, to get into the Academy Awards, it's a film festival in the end, you had to do a 7-day live screening. There was no online stuff. This is pre-pandemic. So we booked the Laemmle Glendale, famous Laemmle family, the Carl Laemmle, who did, Dracula and all that stuff. And it's a wonderful theater. There's a couple of them in town there. It's well-known theaters.
Independent theater.
Yes. Yeah.
The off the beaten path films kind of.
And I had been to the Burbank Lemley for As the Earth Turns and a few other ones like that. And I think they still kind of run things.
And I think there's one down
Kind of like
around
the
Santa
Esquire.
Monica, maybe.
Yeah. So we did the Lemley screening, and it's a block away from the Glendale YMCA. What are the odds? So so now what's interesting is in a couple of weeks I'm going back to Glendale because the Glendale Film Festival is putting on the Scalpel. And somehow I talked him into also showing As the Earth Turns in my documentary.
Excellent.
Which they don't usually do, because usually they just show the film, you do it. But they were so intrigued. Here's this Glendale resident, and they have this opportunity to show a block of his films. And the reality is, between these three films, it's about an 80-minute program, which is wonderful. So I'm going to go down there and show it and do Q&A and the whole bit, and hopefully we get a lot of people to show up. And it's just fascinating to make this loop and bring that back. So again, there's...
You know the date for that?
Yeah, it's it is September 29th at 6:50 p.m. Pacific.
Maybe we'll send Aaron down there, like Mr. Blackwell, or red carpet commentator.
Aaron Leckinger.
Send me down there on the red carpet.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be there. In fact,
you'll have to bring your own red carpet.
Yeah, no, I was so the
red welcome.
He'll ride in on its magic carpet.
That'll
in fact,
work.
I'll be at the local Sightings Film Festival that Friday for another screening of The Scalpel, and then I'm on the plane the next morning to get down to LA. We just got from LA over the weekend. We were at the Silicon Beach Film Festival at the Chinese Theater.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
I mean, if you're going to have a movie, man, that's where you do it.
Was there a red carpet there?
Oh, believe me, yes.
It doesn't get much redder.
Yeah, now that
the street,
theater,
El Capitan, you got all the premieres.
Let me ask you real quick. Yeah. When you do these and you're watching a film for the 5th time or 50th time or whatever, you completely. Do you find yourself like watching the audience and enjoying their reactions to the film and anticipating their reactions to the film as much as?
Well, I mean, on these movies, I don't usually hear much because the music's coming at you. It's not like there's dialogue to create humor. Although even in As the Earth Turns, maybe 1 or 2 scenes of some light humor. There's nothing in here. This is a drama. This is a serious movie. So people are just kind of watching it, and it hasn't been. It's only done a couple of screenings that I've been to so far. So I really can't answer that question of what kind of reactions in general. Well, we went to the Issaquah Film Festival, which is technically the world premiere. And that's a festival run by some young guys. And we did have a Q&A of about 4 or 5 filmmakers. And I was up there a little older than them. and they were talking about their movies. And then I would talk about this thing. And they were all coming to me going, this is incredible. And what I'm so excited about.
I would think any film student would be.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I think this is so important to do at film festivals, it's because he didn't have film festivals in that era. He probably showed this at Garfield High School in Seattle, and maybe somewhere, but it was never released officially. There was an article in the Seattle Star before the Seattle Times or whatever that talks about this film, and again, but it was never officially released, as Your Turns wasn't either, because when these were done, he immediately went to work for Disney, and that's why he didn't have any way to release a 16mm film to begin with. They were too short. They were silent movies
for Disney to distribute either.
Right, but they were silent movies, and by the late 30s, hey, we're talking 1939, Wizard of Oz, color to begin with.
Getting reset, yeah.
Although and as the Turns, you have a little bit of color.
Retrospective of silent movies wouldn't have been a thing that people wanted.
Where I loved to watch silent movies when I was a kid? My favorite, there was a restaurant here, a pizza place called Shakey's Pizza. And
sure.
They had a live piano player, and they play Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Laurel and Hardy.
That's right.
All these, and I love that. That was like my favorite thing when I was a kid.
And I'll bet if my
No,
parents had known about it, we'd have gone to something like
Oh,
that.
I'm sure. Yeah, it was fun.
there was a series of places. There, Pizza and Pipes in Seattle. Now I was from Chicago area originally, but when I came out there, there was a couple of those places, and they had Wurlitzer organs, and you'd have pizza, and they had this incredible players that would do that. In
Yeah.
Seattle, at the Paramount Theater, to this day, they have a series of silent films that they do with a Wurlitzer, plus a percussionist to do the percussion and stuff like that. So there's a lot of interest in it right now, huge amount in silent films. So it's not unusual to find it out there. Anyway, and this film is all over the place. I mean, right now, I just updated. I still have a second update today I got to get to because too many came in over the weekend. I couldn't keep up. But we're up to 68 festivals and 85 awards nominations. The
Great.
percentage of selection through, there's a company called Film Freeway that you submit through. And we're at about 70 to 80% acceptance right now. Now, by the time As the Year Turns was in 130 festivals or whatever, I think it was down to maybe a 30 to 40% acceptance, which is still phenomenal. I'm still at 70, 80%. Over time, that will come down. But it may top 50 to 60% by this is all and done with, which will be astounding. I think because it's a horror.
It's going to win a lot of those too.
Oh, yeah. Well, today it won, what surprises me, I don't, winning a best horror, I kind of see that. I think I'm up to 22 score awards right now, music awards, which is incredible. But a short is much more easy for film festivals. When we did As the Year Turns, it was a funky length at 45 minutes. So film festivals didn't quite know what to do with it. They still wanted it.
What's the usual cutoff for a short?
Well, that varies because, like the Oscars at that time were 40 minutes
or
plus. We were able to do a feature. Well, when we cut As the Earth Turns, it was 44 and change, and that was an interesting thing because I could do it right under 45 or slightly over. I was able to kind of play around with that. These days, shorts can be under 20, under 30. It really depends on the festival. But I knew, and this film was what it was. I add a little bit in the beginning and the end for titles and stuff, but it was like I made it 19 or something, 19 minutes. And that makes it right under 20, which seems to work for tons. But that's your, typical short feature. And again, going back to silence, those were one-reelers that were typical on there. One reel of 60 millimeter film was 20 minutes. And we know, I wasn't sure did I have the whole movie, although it fit. But in his writings, he talked about 800 feet. And through my contacts, we verified that that was the whole film that's on there. With As the Year Turns, I wasn't sure because this is this 45-minute movie. Is it all there? Now, with As the Year Turns, I produced it, and then another discovery in my film cans, after I had scored it, I found a minute from that film that was separated out, that he had pulled out for some reason. It looked a little different, and it was right at a critical point when he's pulling the switch. And it's a phenomenal piece of film. And I put it on the DVD as an extra. And it's a wonderful, and I couldn't put it back in because I would have had to rescore it, and there was no way to do it at that point.
Too much.
You mentioned the storytelling of the Scalpel, and there was a point where I was like, okay, what have I missed? Because he's like 10 minutes into this, and why the hell is he doing this other than just experiment? And then it does reveal. I won't tell you what it. I won't reveal what the reason was. But
it's a short film, so it's all you understand is you had this rather new doc. She taught the nurses are like, oh, who's the new cute doctor? That so he's coming in and he's got a little agenda that they really don't discover. Based on some historic stuff. I think it was based on some history of experiments or something.
He thought he found the cure to cretinism.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the reality is it's in a short film, you don't have time for exposition. One thing I realized scoring these things is that in regular feature, there's times where, you might just hear going on for, just little melodies and just kind of whatever orchestral passages, and people are just looking out in the sea or something like that. And that's part of the whole thing. You got a 2-hour movie. There's a moment for reflection. Or, love, or, and this movie, you don't have time for that. He's got to get from A to B to C on there,
He's got people to kill.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And as a score composer, I don't have the luxury to do that. Now, you were asking about that kind of exotic piano stuff, because here's this classical thing, and I didn't realize I was doing this until when I listened to the second half, I realized, yeah, there's these themes, but then I had these kind of weird pianistic, and I thought, wow, this is interesting, because I have this classical theme, and then somehow I got to that. And that's a little hard to understand as a composer. How did you switch that? But I've discovered that I had de-evolved the score. I had gone from this kind of classical, almost Bach, And you can do that. So you're not hung up by style, and you got to trust the audience is going to be okay with that.
And score is so important. I mean, we have these hallways,
especially for silence.
I'll say.
Yeah, but we have these hallways at University Hospital, and there's just these long, empty corridors. There's no one in them, and you think UC Hospital employs over 3,000 people, and there's these long hallways with no one in them for like half an hour at a time. And you could literally film entire movies in these corridors and no one would know.
Right.
Right, but they're well lit, long hallways. And that's where I think score comes in.
Yeah, they're doing more
because the music does, and I've seen these things where they play the scene with no music and then they play it with like 3 different kinds of music, and it's 3 different movies.
That's right. And I think we talked about this with As the Earth Turns. Because I hadn't really scored silent films before like this. Again, just throwing some music against it, like Lyford did. I mean, he was throwing classical music against these things. Dvorak and, Tchaikovsky and stuff like that. And
yours is more bespoke to the film.
Yeah, I mean, I'm adding emotion.
Music classes to get some composer friends to come over to his house.
Yeah. I mean, the music is dialogue at times, and I'm working around everything that's going on visually. The thing I'm most proud of in the Scalpel is there's a scene where all you see is a notepad of him, and it kind of scrolls down talking about the results of this test. Mm-hmm. And that's and it just takes forever. I mean, in this movie, he's just looking. He does a very good job of allowing the audience to actually read this thing.
Exactly, that's what I was.
Yeah, and at the end, it kind of goes mad, and and on my
what's big question mark? I think
my swag, I make sure that's on the poster. Oh, I got the wrong one. Anyway, where's my? Oh, here it is. Anyway, on this poster here, there's some writing there. You can see it on the.
It's over your shoulder too.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but you kind of see it says "Raging Mad," just enough, and that's that scene. But what I'm proud of is the music gets incredibly involved there. I mean, that's where almost a climactic thing. It builds up.
That you pay attention.
Yeah, and then it hits the second thing where it says that, and I'm like, man, kick ass. And I thought. Because I have to, if I hadn't have done that, people were like, huh? What am I reading? You were glued to the scene. You had to watch that thing. You're expecting something to happen. And all that happens is you go from one card to another. Like, there's no action there.
Yeah.
Yes, I've done my job.
It was a tension moment.
And it really ties together the plot. And,
that's right.
It's kind of the glue of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's the key scene in the film. That's what's amazing about it, and it's nothing more than a notepad, Right. Anyway, but these are extraordinary films, and how they came to me is equally extraordinary. So
it looked like he actually. I mean, because it looked like, I guess it compressed down into the tube, but it looked like he stuck that thing.
He puts his finger there, and whatever, it wouldn't put me past me that he.
It's like, I'm gonna get
alien in him, but. I don't know. I think he was enough of a magician in his how he did stuff. He probably had a trick on that, you
He
know.
probably contracted into the.
Yeah. I mean, he knew
But
guys.
even back then, I'm sure they had trick knives.
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of stuff going on in this thing where he's, you know, he knew about all of those things in filmmaking to do that. So, but you watch this film and you're kind of going, huh, you know, how did they do that? And that last transition where he kind of, you know, does the full thing, and that's was from the part I had already scored. It's reminiscent of As the Earth Turns. There's a scene in As the Earth Turns, kind of the climactic moment when you meet Pax and the camera pans up. It kind of goes down and pans up, and I remember scoring that, just creating a lot of energy. And then you see kind of there he is as this, you know, kind of Dr. No character, you know, in that. This was similar where he rises as the monster in here and kind of the full thing, and then turns to the side, and you know, and that's kind of where this, you know, this image comes from the, anyway, you can't see it on here, but you go to the poster, you see all this stuff. I put as many images as I could get away with on the poster.
All the lighting was angled up so that the shadows were cast up, and then, you know,
he was brilliant with lighting, that's for sure. No, I get that. You know, and he's using like a Kodak 60 millimeter basic camera. He knew lenses. He probably had a few. He could do that.
You can figure out what the lady's thinking about. Was really cool too.
That's right. Yeah. No, he had all that together. And there's, you know, you can tell this is, again, before As the Earth Turns. It's a little rougher. There's a scene where he's kind of coming in on Barbara quickly, you know, and she's like, and it's later he I think his close-ups are a little better on that. But that's what I think. You know, hopefully, if more of these films do show up, you'll be able to see more of a lineage of there. Now, if I'm successful finding somebody in the universe to create this screenplay of the first 20 years in Seattle, then I have some scenes from these other films based on my research of what they probably looked like, or at least what I thought would be fun. And I you know, he had a really fun youth. You know, in the documentary, I talk about a scene where in third grade he produces Dracula in his elementary school, you know, assembly, and you know, it's straight out of Addams Family. Blood is flowing everywhere, and he gets, and the casting crew gets kicked out for 3 days. You know?
Well, we did watch the documentary the first time you were on, but I can't recall. Is there any footage of him talking or any?
No.
Anything?
The closest I have is Chris, his son, is what he might have sounded like.
Pass along.
I always thought he looked. If you know, years ago when I first saw this guy, and I thought I could, you know, it'd be fun to see a movie about him. At that time, Bill Hader had the same eyebrow thing going, and I thought that'd be the guy to play him. But at this point, if you're going to do a movie about him at this age, you know, you're talking about somebody who's going to be anywhere from, you know, 7 to 18, 20 years old. I think it can be done with two actors, you know, generally 3 is probably best. But, you know, and he was a shrimpy kid at first, but by the time he's making this movie, he's like towering above everybody else. He really grew.
When he's going through the doorway.
Yeah.
But everybody's mustache too. None of the mustaches meet in the middle.
Right. Well, no,
there's some serious facial hair stuff going on.
Well, and then beards. There's the cigarette smoking and all these movies. It's just this off the charts. You know, everybody's smoking because that was the thing to do.
In the lab,
the guy's mixing chemicals with a cigarette burning in his mouth.
Oh yeah, he's just doing it. You know, he's as he's sitting down to do the transition, he kind of lights up. You know, kind of relax for a minute. You know, and then the thing he says that they knew too much. You know, he uses the same. It's the same intertitle, it was differently done, and As the Earth Turns. So there's an interesting, you know, through between that. You can see that. Yeah. You know, that was kind of almost a tagline, I guess.
I'll tell you the film that you're trying to make about him. That sounds like the screenplay rather.
Yeah.
If that goes to stage, there's this theater called the Ensemble Theater here in Cincinnati.
Oh yeah,
definitely sounds perfect for it.
Well, he's a little more talented.
Yeah. It'll be a musical. Who knows?
Well, there you've lost Philip.
There's the opening.
No, I mean, I envisioned a screenplay for, film.
For a movie.
What's it called? The great film about the car developed in the 50s, Tucker.
Oh,
Tucker.
I always thought that was a tremendous movie, and that was kind of my inspiration. I thought that was the kind of movie I would make a biopic of. It's a fun movie to watch, and this film, my struggle with it, the screenplay, is that I don't know enough bad things that happened to him. And to make a movie, you got to have a lot of, yin and yang. There's got to be struggle and all the rest of it. Now, I've added a bit, and
always add a high school bully.
Right. Well, there's enough there, and even in Tucker, he had a struggle with the government and everything else. So that was that. In this case, based on research and all the rest of it, his dad was not really interested in him becoming a filmmaker. His dad was into the timber industry. He was kind of a forestry engineer and stuff. And he had 3 boys and a daughter. And it was like, you guys are going to work for me, buddy. And he was not going to have any of that. And his mother, on the other hand, was very much into the arts and stuff like that. And so I think what's interesting is that she probably pushed him on there, and there was back and forth on there. So I think there's enough drama there that would have happened over his lifetime, going there, and he eventually breaks loose and goes to L.A., as opposed to taking the traditional route. He was also involved with his folks knew the Boeings. Boeing was pretty young at this point. It was actually an interesting company that was producing early airplanes and the first mail service. And, they need the publicity now.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Talks about that all the time.
But the Nordstroms were getting going then. And these guys, because of where they, status in life, they were kind of upper middle class is my best understanding. But what's interesting is both Richard's dad and Boeing did go to school. I can't remember which one, but on the East Coast around the same time. So it's very possible and likely they knew each other. Again, Boeing came with a lot more resources, on there.
Didn't, as the Earth turns, didn't you say there was one scene where he was shooting in?
He shot at Boeing Field, which is still there,
and they were like. He just barely got chased out of there or something like that.
Well, not that one, but he had wormed his way into there probably through connections at Boeing, through his family in there. And, he was the kind of guy who could talk himself into all sorts of stuff. He was also a photographer, and he was tremendous with drawing skills. He could draw with both hands at the same time, which I'm sure Disney found like, I want this guy doing animation. And Rich is probably like, no, but he could do 2 at once, So think about that. But no, they didn't break into that. He was able to talk his way into using that sort of thing. Gotcha. And I've developed scenes on how that would have probably taken place over the years and how he got his first cameras and stuff like that. I think he very well could have talked his way into doing some photography and PR for Nordstrom's, and people like that. So,
he's ambidextrous. That's blowing my mind right now.
So, he was that kind of guy.
Ambidextrous, though. Because the ambidextrous is just being able to write with both hands and do stuff with both hands.
Yeah, that's
but that's a little more than ambidextrous. That's called something else. There's a name for it.
Well, I mean,
drawing with 2 hands is
drawing with both hands. That's a little bit beyond just utility.
Right.
That's insane.
No, there's actually a name for that, but I can't remember what it is.
Well, we should say we're talking about Richard Lyford and his film The Scalpel, which has been beautifully restored by our guest Ed Hartman. Every once in a while, we should
restored
bring
and
listeners up to speed and scored exactly.
That's right. Yeah. And it's going to be in a theater near you, and just like right now, because I'm trying to keep up with this stuff. There's all sorts of online screenings and stuff like that, and I just came back from LA for a screening. What's coming up right now, I don't know when this gets broadcast, but the next screenings at local sightings in Seattle, end of September, in the Monster of the Week block, and then in Glendale with As the Year Turns, It Gets in Your Blood. That is an absolute must-see if you're anywhere near LA. You really got to go there. It's an historic theater to begin with. And that I'm just going to have my own block myself. The Chicago Horror Film Festival in September. I don't have a date on that yet. At the Logan Theater, they're digging it. Tacoma Film Festival on the 11th of October. Haunted House Fear Fest, end of September at the Triad Theater in New York City. I don't have a date on that yet. San Diego Halloween Film Festival, which just sounds amazing, in an outdoor venue on Halloween. This is a Halloween movie, big time. So, there's a lot of interest for that. And I'm going to go to some of these. I can't go to most of them these days, but it's a really fun movie to see. I can't go to that one. I wish I could. I mean, the Glendale's going to kill me just doing that one. I think the next time around. We were down in LA. It was only 110.
Here today, it's in Thousand Oaks. We were supposed to top out at 99. Tomorrow, 88. The next day, 78.
It's coming way down. We stayed on the water.
We were in the 70s today.
Yeah. No, we were at least, on the waterfront, and so it was, in the upper 80s, But when we went to Hollywood, man, that was another thing.
It's usually Burbank, cooler here, and it's still over 100 the past 3 days.
No, I think the first day we got there, Burbank was 114. So, man, and we had
was 119.
Yeah.
Well, this is around
we had a couple of years ago and see.
Right?
Yeah, we could see them from in the distance in the San Bernardino Mountains. In Seattle a couple of years ago, it got up to 100 and something or other.
Yeah, I remember that. You guys don't have any air conditioning.
No, and it was smoky, so you really couldn't have your windows open.
Wow.
Yeah, but I
encourage. Go ahead, Ed.
No, I encourage people to just see this thing whenever they can, and again, the As the Year Turns website, which is on my website, I think astheyearturns.com is still pegged to go on my website, but under the films menu, you'll see all of these projects labeled, and you can kind of see where their statuses are on there.
Yeah, I can testify.
And I've been edhartmanmusic.com.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, you have links and stuff like that. But again, the backstories have been phenomenal.
Let's wrap up. We do a little something different than we did when you were on the first time, and we don't have to do it, but we try to do it to make reels and stuff like that for the
little game.
Yeah. We call it the Elite 8 mini bracket, and then the topic we selected, because we had talked about Frank Zappa the last time, which you share an interest in.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in doing that, or do you?
Oh no, I can do it. I felt like I didn't want to seem like a Frank Zappa expert, but I love his music, and I've seen him live a few times.
Might have to be an expert to know some of these titles. Maybe not mine.
Oh yeah, go for it. It's been a long time. My brain is not.
But trust me, Aaron will fill us in.
Yeah. So I'll be the Wink Martindale for this. And I'll be the host, and not have that way. We have 3 voters, and that way. Well, maybe you should be. Maybe you should be, because you probably don't know any of these songs. So maybe
I don't really know the songs.
Why don't you
played some of them?
Why don't you be the hostess?
Okay.
This time.
Welcome to YUH's Elite 8. This week we're featuring Frank Zappa, because we have multiple Frank Zappa fans in the room. So let's start. It's a simple process based on the Elite. The basketball
songs, and you choose one over the
other. Right. You pick. I'm going to name 2 songs. Pick one. Okay.
Oh, okay.
No. Florentine Pogan versus Inca Rhodes.
What was the first one? Florentine
Pogan. Pogen.
Oh yeah. Well, Inca Rhodes I know, but isn't that Inca Rhodes?
Inca Rhodes is doo-doo, doo-doo.
Oh, there you go.
Same album.
Well, they have the same album, Overnight Sensation, or whatever.
I think they are both on One Size Fits All, maybe.
Florentine poke, whatever. They're similar. Modal writing by Frank. Again, I don't know. I love that whole damn album, so I couldn't pick between them. I think it's the that first track on that album that just blows me away.
That's Inca Roads.
Man, it just explodes on you. It's a stereo orgasm.
Sounds
Inca
like
Roads
it's
is my
for
choice.
Inca Roads to me. So
Okay.
Yeah, I love that. That's headphone music all the way.
Yeah.
Oh, you want me to go?
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
got
I'm gonna go with
some
Flo-
good percussion from Ruth Underwood in it too.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going with Florentine Pogan because that's the one I nominated. Although I like Inca Roads as well. But
Mhm.
Aaron,
Right.
what do you
So
got?
Inca Roads moves on.
All right.
Yep.
Inca
Okay.
Roads moves into the final four.
Okay. Don't eat the yellow snow versus watermelon and Easter hay.
Well, I'm not putting together watermelon and Easter hay. Is that early?
It's an instrumental guitar
Mhm.
solo basically off of Joe's Garage.
Yeah, I got a little bit
78.
farther away from Joe's. I listened to it a few times, but I was more in the
That one
Roxy
can
and
be a tough listen
elsewhere.
for people with the central scrutinizer talking through his megaphone the whole time.
Right. No, I love the concept of that album, but that was a job to listen to.
Yeah,
he was
this is
definitely telling people, you're going to sit down and just listen to 2 albums or whatever the hell this is.
This is the last guitar solo that he dreams that he plays after music's been outlawed when he's in jail.
I'd have to go with Yellow Snow just based on my lack of putting together the first one.
Right. I'm going watermelon and Easter hay.
Okay.
Now, I'm secure in my musical knowledge in that I nominated Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, and I love it. But I happened to listen to Watermelon and Easter Hay, and that was a great guitar solo. I mean, it was just really smooth. So I'm gonna side with Aaron on that one.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
So we're gonna move that one.
So
you know more than I do. Has any of you guys seen Dweezil's show?
I've seen him about upwards of 10 times, probably 12
Holy
or 13.
cow. Well, I was up here in Seattle. We saw him at the Paramount where they videoed the original video, that became the DVD. Here in Portland, it was an edit.
The 2006 one, the first
when they
tour.
first toured. We
I
saw
saw
that
the tour closer. I saw the Wilshire Theater.
Yeah, and that was an incredible show with what's his name out front in the circle of drums. No.
Terry Bozzio.
Terry Bozzio, doing fronting the band with the second drummer in the back.
Yeah, when I saw him, I think he'd pulled some kind of tendon.
Oh wow!
And in Arizona a day or two before, so he could only sing. He couldn't drum, or he drummed one-handed. Well,
I can believe that. No, we saw the whole thing. It was like the first couple of weeks of the tour, and it was incredible, just unbelievable on there.
Yeah, he had one hand in a bandage or a cast.
Right. Yeah.
But we had Steve Vai there also, and Napoleon Murphy Brock.
Now, did you see Frank at any point live?
No, I was planning on it in 1988. I was at Domino's Pizza in Cincinnati, and he was playing in Dayton that night.
Right.
I was gonna go with John McDermott. We were both opening that day, and there was a blizzard, and the freeway was the closed for Cincinnati and Dayton, and the manager wouldn't let me off anyway because we were just backed up with orders all day long. I probably worked a 12-hour shift.
Well, I saw him, I think, at the Chicago Stadium. I saw him at the Chicago Stadium in the 70s, and then at Indiana University at the basketball arena with Bozzio. And it was the first time I saw him, it was the full band. It was a huge group. And then when I saw him later, it was with Bozzio, and he had reduced that down to maybe 5 or 6 pieces. I was initially disappointed, going, "Where's all the others?" And then they did the entire what's the Donut Yellow Snow album?
Apostrophe.
Yeah, Apostrophe live, in 30 minutes straight, and you didn't miss anything. Yeah. And how they even do that? But that's Bozzio. He could sound like 30 people at once.
Yeah.
One arm.
Yeah.
All right, Lisa, go ahead.
Okay. St. Alfonso's
Yep.
pancake breakfast
Right.
versus Stevie's spanking.
But you guys know these other ones I don't know.
Yeah.
Where is Stevie spanking from? What is that?
That's a song that Frank wrote about a story he heard Steve Vai relaying,
Oh, okay.
and it's got a amazing dual guitar solo in the middle of this one.
Wow. What was it from? What album was it from?
Maybe Us or Them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, again, I've missed a few things here and there, but you can catch up nowadays. Although, the family's very, limited on what gets out there.
Yeah.
So
if you go on YouTube and do Zappa Stevie's spanking, it's
on there.
It's the first one that'll pop up. You'll see Steve
I'll
Vai
check it
in
out.
like a
I don't
leopard
know.
print top.
Yeah.
So Ed,
yeah.
I'm guessing you're St. Alfonso's pancake breakfast then. If you,
well, didn't we already do that one?
That one's like the second half of "Don't Eat the Yellow Snow."
Right. Yeah. No, I get that.
It's the song after,
that's right.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a wonderful
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
That's got
So
incredible
it's-
xylophone solo in it for sure.
all right. You going with spanking? You opting for a spanking?
Stevie's spanking is from them or us.
Them or us?
Yeah, them
Them
or us.
or us.
All right.
I had it backwards. I said us or them.
Well, this is why I didn't opt to get into a, too heavy of a Zappa thing, because I have this a little more focused.
I'm gonna go Stevie's
this is
spanking.
like-
That one's a jam.
Breakfast or spanking? Which
Well,
do you like better?
It's a little bit of a stacked.
Oh,
It's a pretty
breakfast.
body tail, though.
Yeah, yeah. No,
One,
breakfast
the
for sure
or
for
the
me.
spanking.
Well, I'm
Oh.
going with St. Alfonso's pancake bread.
That's a
Yeah,
pretty
St.
body one
Alfonso's
too.
for me,
She
too.
abused the sausage patty and said, "Why don't you treat me mean?"
Right. Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
No, I'm with the pancakes. So
Yeah.
All right.
pancakes and snow for me.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right,
Okay.
Lisa.
The last in the Elite Eight, The Torture Never Stops versus Peaches and Regalia.
Well, historically, Peaches and Regalia goes way the heck back, and that I just have to go with that. And I don't even know the second one by name.
Peaches
so-
for sure.
Yeah, no, that's like his anthem.
Peaches and regalia it is.
There's actually, you can actually get the chart in the original real book, the illegal one. Somebody wrote it out just for those that wanted to attempt it.
Yeah. All right, Lisa.
I have a copy here.
So now things get more interesting.
We're in the final four.
Yep, final
Brent
four.
Musburger.
Who's
from
winning?
Musburger.
Inca Road versus Watermelon in Easter Hay.
Gotta go Inca Roads. That's
Inca Road.
my favorite.
Yep, Anchor Roads.
Yeah, Inca
Okay.
Roads. And okay.
And the second half of the final four, St. Alfonso's pancake breakfast versus Peaches and Regalia.
It's getting a little harder to pick,
Mm-hmm.
Peaches for me.
Yeah, I mean, historically, just as a important piece of music, Peaches is it. I see apostrophe as one piece. I don't
Yeah, I could see
it
that.
as and then I remember the original cassette. It was like it would fade from A to B. I mean, you couldn't even listen to the whole thing throughout or the album, and that was a mistake because I got he had not since Santana Abraxas had I heard music arranged as a suite like that in popular music, like a symphonic, or he was writing orchestral.
Zappa was doing that.
Yeah. So I mean,
Grateful Dead did a little bit of it.
No, it's
The
hard to
Report
find.
Suite.
Beatles. You're getting
Beatles for sure doing it.
Yeah, it's Sergeant Pepper's.
Abbey
I mean,
Road
this
and
was
Sgt.
that
Pepper.
whole thing. So I don't know. I think I like apostrophe better as a piece of music. Peaches was like his earlier music that I think he was learning how to write as a composer. I got the feeling he dug it. It was a cool piece of music, but then he was like, I'm going to have to write 3 million other pieces of music now that are going to be a whole lot better than that. And I understand that. He probably wouldn't go back then and go, that was a great piece of music. It was like, well, that was really good. You know,
He kept changing it by the end. I think on the Yellow Shark, there's Peaches 3.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was like the black page, you know.
Yeah.
So
Love the black page too.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know, man. That's a really tough one on me.
What were the choices again?
Peaches
pancakes, breakfast, or peaches?
and pancakes.
Peaches for me.
Peaches or pancakes?
Okay. I'm still deciding here. If it was a pasta, it'd be
All
easier
right.
if it was albums.
The whole album.
I think I'd
But
be
I won't
able
let
to-
you off the hook though. I'll go ahead and I'll go St. Alfonso's so that you still have to do the deciding.
Oh,
I
no.
still got
Decimating
to.
vote.
Oh
He's
man.
evil. People don't think he's evil.
Saint
They think I'm the
that
mean
was
one.
my nomination.
But he's the mean one.
That was my nomination.
Man, I don't know. I am really twisted on
I'll
that.
punch him for you.
We can't have a tie, can we?
Sure.
Yeah?
Well, going into in that case, what'll happen is
I think
in the
what happen
final,
is
it'll
the
be
other one would win.
think of
Yeah, the other
pancake or
bracket.
peaches.
Yeah. Man, I'm trying to think what my favorite Zappa anything is. That's really the bigger issue for me.
Well,
Is what
you
for me
can
it's
base
Inca
it on
Roads
the
and
album.
Peaches
Are
are my
both of
1 and
those on
2,
the
I'd
same
say.
album?
Oh, what's
Yeah.
from the same album?
They're
Are
not.
both of them on the same album?
No.
Then pick
Peaches
the album
is
that
on
you
Hot
prefer.
Rats.
Yeah, I'm going with apostrophe from an album, so I have to go with the pancakes.
Okay.
From that
Fair
enough.
standpoint,
Pancakes.
if I have to go
So,
there, I'm going
so
with
then
that.
it's pancakes versus Inca
Apologies to
Roads.
Frank.
Yeah. Oh,
It's it's like saying, well, Beethoven's first symphony never really got there anyway, so nobody listens to it. Well, come on, man, it's Beethoven. I think he would
St.
understand.
Alfonso's versus
pancake breakfast.
Apostrophe is like
Inca Roads.
Beethoven's third, then you're fifth
Yeah.
even. That's when he's like hitting his stride. He's really creating recording music. That's why I was astounded when they were able to play it live. 'Cause that's not a piece I would imagine you would do live. It just and he's got like stereo panning going on. That's why you got to listen to it on headphones. There's stuff bouncing back and forth. It's extraordinary. It's almost surround sound
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, I said
What's
this
going on?
last time when we did the Zappa album. The thing that is remarkable about him is how the entire ensemble, the entire band takes all his directions from Frank, and he's actually in control of the entire.
Yeah,
he's like a
there's
conductor. He's
improv
like a
and-
conductor, even if he's playing guitar, whatever he's
That's
doing.
right.
He's
Well, they were. It was like being in the. According to him, it was like being in the Marines. And he was. There was improv and stuff like that, but they had physical motions and gestures that were all incorporated into everything. And what's really amazing about it, Dweezil's show is they spent 2 years working on that before they went on the road, and he had a lot of the guys from the original band, Napoleon and people like that. So it was really something to see that live. I tell people that those shows, because I'm one of the few that probably can say I've seen the original and his kid. I think Dweezil's shows were as good as Frank's, based on what I saw.
He kept improving too.
Yeah, well, he had the time and the budget and all the rest
And
of it.
he's got the secret weapon, is Sheila Gonzalez in the band. She's badass. She's
well, I think the musicians.
she's a vocalist / horn / flute / keyboard.
Well, everybody
player.
did like triple duty on that thing, So they finally, rather than moving marimbas and xylophones, they did wind up with a more electronic mallet, which was a smart move. Because especially on a stage that was vertical going up the back, I wouldn't want to move those instruments.
Right.
A lot smarter, but no, it was. It's still
Work
an
smarter,
incredible
not
band.
harder.
All right, at least
Yeah.
you got
I don't know what he's
that.
doing now. For Dweezil's, I think he's really evolving into his own guy now.
He's touring still with. I think he's going to be playing Calabasas pretty soon.
But is it more tribute shows, or he's moving?
It's more the Zappa stuff, yeah.
Yeah, but he's writing more of his own, which is great.
He did release one album. I think it's called Zapata. He went back to Sicily, where they're from, and I think they're from a street called Zapata Way or something like that, and that's when he wrote it.
You know, I tell people if they want to experience that, but the closest, my favorite era was the Roxy and Elsewhere.
Yeah, I like
because that you have dual drummers.
I saw the Roxy and Elsewhere, whatever anniversary it was.
Yeah.
It must have been 5-10 years ago. And yeah, they did the whole album.
Well,
Just
Ralph
like a penguin
Humphrey
in
and
bondage,
Chester
boy.
Thompson. Yeah, Ralph Humphrey and Chester Thompson on drums, and man, just
Chester's
the
thing.
amount of stuff
On
that's
Ruth.
going on in that film, and you know, and you can watch that whole film on I don't know what platform I saw it on, but man, it's. I remember I had
still
the
haven't
album.
seen
I have
it.
the
I knew
new
they were.
album.
I was waiting for them to release the film. They finally
Oh,
released it.
it's out there, yeah. You know, and it's a double album when it came out. That was, man, that was like going on a giant excursion, you know. And there's people coming up on stage and dancing and stuff like that. And listening to on a record, you know, on headphones again or whatever, because he brought his own recording studio wherever he went and recorded everything he did.
The Utility Muffin Research Kitchen was his mobile recording studio.
Here you go.
I love that.
You are the man.
Your trivia. That's
Ahead of me.
All right,
UMRK.
here we go. The
I
final.
know just enough to be dangerous.
Lisa, you got to take control of your game show here.
And now for the final round.
We're not done?
Difficult decisions. No, we got to choose between Inca and Saint Inca Roads versus Saint Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast.
Again, Inca Roads.
Inca Roads for me.
Yeah, if you were talking about the entire Apostrophe album, you got a case. But Pancake Breakfast is one piece. It's like a movement out of a symphony.
Next time we'll do albums.
Well, I like the second movement of whatever. And I want the whole symphony. You know, that's the thing.
Right.
Inca
And
Roads.
even the other album, even the Overnight Sense, that's an incredible thing. But that first track just blows your mind. I mean, it just comes on strong. I think that thing probably influenced me more than any other Zappa tune. Thinking about it, just because of the electronics that came in, it was the first time you felt like, you know, he's moved to a different era. Before that, it was much more an acoustic sound.
Got those synths going. George Duke on vocals.
It was clean. I mean, there was a whole stereo imagery that was much more involved at that point.
I liked it.
You
I
know.
probably listened to it about 6 times before we did the episode. So.
From somewhere out
We
there.
need to have you back on when we do an album, and when Aaron does Aaron's audio edibles.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. You can.
I
It's got to be. That's when we do a deep dive into an album Phil's never heard in its entirety before.
Well, I'll have to have heard it myself.
Oh, there's a lot of those. I'm sure you're ahead of him.
No.
Is he?
I know what I know, but I'm
until
not an
Aaron's
audiophile.
Until Aaron's edibles, Philip never really listened to. Aaron's the one who made him start listening to whole albums, as opposed to just songs.
Not entirely
He
true.
listens to full
Okay.
albums. It's just the same as full albums.
Well, it's very hard
Well,
nowadays because if you go to YouTube, you got, they cut them up and there's advertising in between everything that's going on.
I get too
You
fake.
can't listen.
Spotify's pretty good about it
Yeah. Well, I don't pay for any of that
if you
stuff.
pay for it.
Well, I
Musician.
recently got him a record player, so we're
there you
back
go.
on vinyl. And
Well, I have my
we do
vinyl, but I don't have
a vinyl
So you don't
shop.
have a player?
here.
Well, I had a couple players, but the needles are gone, and so I gave up. And I figure I'm usually down at the beach listening, and I'll just listen to YouTube and get what I can. During the pandemic, I spent a lot of hours at the beach in the headphones, and I discovered music on YouTube pretty thoroughly at that point. And it was,
Cool.
I think a lot of musicians, we all kind of rediscovered.
You can find anything almost anything. There's almost nothing that you can't find on YouTube.
But I had never really spent all that time listening, and it just kind of hit me like, wow, I haven't listened to this album in 30 years, and I was just, I couldn't get enough.
The format's not ideal because
Well, there's more open. There's more to do.
your phone will go to sleep and it'll stop playing and stuff like that. But you can find almost anything.
Yeah, there's an interesting channel or on it's called Streaming Soundtracks, and I get it on my app on my phone, whatever the music radio app is. You know, you can listen to radio stations, and it's just solid 24/7, no advertising of soundtracks. And I was working out at the gym, and it was like the opening from Superman by John Williams, and then they'll kick into some 1940s thing, and then it'll be a modern, you know, Marvel heroes thing, you know.
Twin Peaks.
That's my kind of show. And then there's the PBS or the NPR show that's based in Portland with Edmund Stone, the score. I'm Edmund Stone, and he does an hour of score, and he features styles of movies, genres. You know, he's picked by anything, or is possibly a composer, and that's a wonderful show that just does a dive into it. It's one of the few places on radio you can hear film scores. Because again, as much as I love commercial music and stuff like that, you know, of course, Zappa, he dabbled in film scoring with that one movie, with that wild movie.
200 Motels?
No. Before then, he was really going to be a score composer.
Mm-hmm.
And he did this crazy movie. It was an experimental film. And it's a really weird movie, and he did kind of really weird score with it. And I think that was his goal at that point. And then he veered away from it once he discovered the mothers of invention, you know, but he was more of a straight-laced, you know, kind of guy. Yeah. His backstories are incredible. You know, his writing to Varese and, you know, people like that. You know, people don't understand the intensity of that guy. And if he hadn't have been born exactly when he was born and hadn't been into all this other stuff, you know, he probably would have been like me. You know, he would have done some entirely other things. So.
Yeah. Well,
he'd have been like you, or he'd have been like Mozart.
Well, he would have been much better than me, but I mean, he would have. He'd been using logic for sure. You know.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, maybe not. You know, he might have said, the hell with that stuff. I'd rather. He was, in a way, he's lucky because he it was like John Williams's pen and paper, pencil and paper. He's never touched a computer in his life. And you don't seem to miss it with his music. So, you know, we kind of complain about
Zappa was early on the computers.
Well, did Zappa live like a rock star? I mean, I think he was in like Laurel Canyon or something, wasn't he?
He pretty much spent his entire life writing music and touring. That was it.
So, I mean, he had big parties and cocaine parties and shit like that?
No. He did not do any drugs whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't allow anybody to do drugs. If people did anything like that on tour, they were gone. They were
what
about his? He didn't want to find himself with his drummer being detained somewhere in Europe or anything like that.
No, because his music was too hard. You couldn't do it. That's why they had to rehearse for a year before they went on tour to do this stuff. He knew.
Then, like at the height of their powers, he just said, "Oh, by the way, we're gonna suspend the band now. You just disperse and go on to your other projects. Maybe we'll come back together, maybe not," right?
That's right. Well, he realized the band wasn't as good as the music needed it to be. And he had to, he decided his goal was because he was really the primary composer, and he needed to create a band based on his writing. He needed his own orchestra to do that. That's why he did that.
In the end, he was writing on the synclavier, which was doing everything that humans couldn't.
Yeah. Huh. And God knows how many thousands of tapes are in Laurel Canyon to this day in the vault. You know, they keep releasing stuff. I get all his emails, and, you know, it's like, man, nobody's ever heard this. You know? And the family's, you know, battling it out.
So, kind of like Prince, I guess, right? Prince has supposedly got this huge backlog of stuff.
Or other family members are involved.
Yeah. No, I'd have loved to have met him. That's a regret. I didn't get a chance to do that, but because I've met some interesting people in my life for sure. But man, you just got to wonder.
Got about 3 photos with Dweezil on the little meet and greets after shows.
Man, yeah. No, I mean, I've had an interesting.
Did you talk?
Dweezil?
Yeah, just photo ops.
Or was it just like pictures?
You get to talk for about 20, 30 seconds. Take a picture.
Yeah, no, it would have been interesting. And I was coming out of in Indiana, 79. So that was the kind of opportunity that theoretically, I'm being a percussionist, I could have gone after if I wanted to, but I really wasn't that focused. I did wind up with Paul Winter consort for a few shows, and then I realized I'm not that guy either. I'm really more of my own person. That's the thing about me as a musician. I realized I'm not a sideman. And I just had a friend of mine ask me if I'd do a marimba solo from, I forgot it's a famous 1970s thing that has this classic, and he said, I need a note for note. And I'm like, no, I don't have that brain anymore to pull that off. I never really did. I love mistakes, and that's always been me. But that's why and these scores are based on improvisational scoring initially. So that's why I like them. I can kind of let them evolve, and then I'll cut them into pieces and then orchestrate from there. Well, so if you get to see these films, it's a little, they're not slick scores in any way, but I think because of the era and the genre, you can accept them kind of for what they are. For sure.
Oh yeah, it definitely fits well.
And I was heavily influenced by Bach and Baroque counterpoint, and that comes out in almost everything I write. So, which again, you go back to the 30s and 40s, and that's pretty typical. As the Earth Turns has a little bit of jazz in it. This one, again, it's a shorter film, but it's straight dramatic and horror and that sort of thing. So I had to stay much more specific into that.
Yeah.
I went through a period of my life where I started collecting classical music. I mean, I would take my lunch money between the ages of like 13 and graduation, 18, 16, 17, whatever. I'd take my lunch money and I'd go to record theater and I'd buy one classical tape a week over the course of the school year while I waited for my bus. And I'd take it home and listen to it. So I gained an appreciation for it, during that time.
I don't know what Lyford might have put music against the Scalpel or not. I mean, I'm sure he did, because he had been experimenting at that point. But I don't know. With As the Earth Turns, I know he was into Stravinsky, Rite of Spring.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that when I was writing. When I was writing it, I didn't know that when I started, and then I was told that that he had been, scoring these things with records, and I'm flipping out, going, "Oh my God, I may be wrong." But then I started listening to what I've been writing. Well, you know what? There's polyrhythmic stuff going on. That's Stravinsky, baby. I'm all right.
Sweet.
On there. Now with Ritual, I don't really have a clue on that, but I do know generally what composers he dug. And I also discovered that he was likely to have picked up many of his recordings probably at Woolworth's. There was a series of really inexpensive albums that they would sell. It was kind of like K-Tel Records at the time. And he probably picked them up in quantity there, and that became his record collection on that. So.
I developed like an appreciation.
You get.
I didn't really care for like Brahms. I felt like that was like too brooding, and it wasn't very slow moving. But I really appreciated the Baroque sound of like Bach. I could really understand the virtuosity of the music with like Mozart, and then but I found myself gravitating to some of the more popular pieces, like you said, the Rite of Spring, Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony, the Nutcracker Suite, stuff like that.
Well, Brahms is you got to listen to it. You got to find it, because I listen more and more to Brahms, and I think it's the second
sonata.
Second or third? No, that's Beethoven. But there's a second or third, and he gets very polyrhythmic where he's playing 2 against 3, and there's a whole lot of really intriguing stuff in his orchestration. These really big butt chords that come at you. I used to teach kind of a class in theory and rhythm and stuff, and I would always play this one section that would just, and in fact, the chord that he gets into, that at this one point, it's just kind of like, that's not it. Sorry. What is it? It's what we call a seventh chord with the seventh and the bass. So and that's actually my logo for Eighth Sense Productions, and it's prominent in As the Earth Turns, where I developed it, and even in the Ritual. So it Bach, and that was a Bach chord that he put in a lot of pieces, and it's one thing that it's spacey as heck. I mean, it just really just sits there, and you're kind of
like the Steely Dan chord.
yes. Yeah, you're right on.
The thing about classical music that people, you could find 3 or 4 different renditions by different orchestras and stuff like that, and unless you hear the right one, you're not going to develop the appreciation for it.
That's right.
You really have to be steeped in the,
Well, I grew up in Chicago. My folks had tickets to Chicago
Definitely doesn't
Symphony.
help if you're tone deaf.
Yeah, right.
Well, I don't know about that.
Lisa's been diagnosed that way.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a singer. You just got to have ears. but when I grew up in Chicago, and my folks had tickets to Chicago Symphony with George Schulte. So we would go and see that. And then at Ravinia, which is north of the city in Highland Park, in the summer, that was their summer palace. And we'd go up there and watch them there. And even in high school, we would get into the grounds and then sneak into the theater area, the outdoor theater, and sit in the front seat and listen to Beethoven or whatever. I can't remember, but that's a whole nother level. When you hear that level orchestra, it is a different experience for sure. So Seattle Symphony is very, very good now. When I came here, it was kind of a secondary thing. Now it's major league, and I think most symphonies in cities are incredible nowadays. They've
we have music hall.
Yeah.
What's that?
Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra is pretty.
We have music hall.
Cincinnati is a wonderful orchestra.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm saying a lot of the secondary cities that weren't Chicago or New York or whatever have really evolved into there. So they brought in finally great conductors to bring it in, and then those guys kind of cleared house. I remember in Seattle when I first came here, there was a number of people in the orchestra that had the same last name. That told you something about it.
Hey, Phil, tell them the name of your fantasy baseball team.
Oh yeah, the name of my fantasy baseball team happens to be Phil's Harmonic Orchestra.
Yeah,
it's a little pretentious, but then the uniform, we got a musical note, a little.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the scoop from my end here.
Yeah.
I don't know what else I can tell you about this stuff, but
it's been enjoyable.
I can't
recommend it enough. Absolutely.
Enjoyed the discussion.
It's fun. It's really a fun movie, and it's for all ages. Yeah, if you don't mind some black and white blood.
Anybody
the gore is definitely not
filmmaking or film history. It's a must-watch.
I've thought about
that. 5-year-old could watch it.
Yeah, kids nowadays they see much worse on TikTok.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Ed. Well, it's been a pleasure. Let's go ahead.
Thank you very much. I had a wonderful time.
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah. Really enjoyed it.
EdHartmanMusic.com, everybody.
We have social.
Twitter.
Yeah, pod.
Instagram.
Yeah, pod.
Facebook.
Yeah, pod. So let us know. Hit us back. Have a great week.